right, guys. We'll let a few people come in from outside here as we get going. Let me just run over the rules real quick. If you guys weren't here for the ISD forum as well too. Each candidate's going to have a 1-minute opening statement and then a 2-minute closing statement. If necessary, I might follow up on some of the questions as we get going here. There is a 1-minute answer to each of the questions, so we can have feedback from everybody. The Burchads are showing the time down there, so I know you guys will keep an eye on that since he's in the front row and Mr. Burchad is too. There's a lightning round at some point in here as well, and time permitting, you might be able to ask your opponents questions directly. So with that, let's get started with the 1-minute opening statement, and Jean, we'll start with you. Let's see.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jean Wise, and the reason I'm running is that Frisco has been growing so rapidly, as everyone's probably noticed, and in the rapid growth, we have started developing some issues. And our biggest issues are taxes, density, congestion, traffic, infrastructure improvements, and economic development. The tax burden is taking a toll on our residents, and many people feel that large corporations and special interest groups take precedence over the people who live in Frisco. And that's why I'm running. The people need to have a voice. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, good evening everyone. My name is Mukesh Parna. I'm running for Frisco City Council Place 2. My background is I worked in the corporate world for 20 years, dealing a lot of with technology upgrades and a lot of project management, planning design, and basically also a lot of contract management. And currently my experience has been working with several cities in the Dallas DFW area, working on plan design and infrastructure improvements. When I moved to Frisco, I left my corporate world and I thought this was my home. I like the suburb, I like the southern culture, and I started my own small business and I've been working successfully on it. But when I saw the city of Frisco growing, and I've been fortunate enough to involve a lot of community services at the ground level, I realized a lot of people doesn't have the same lifestyle as I do. And that is when I realized I need to step up and come up forward and stand for our city council election and bring my experience and passion working with the community services to work for the city council. Thank you.
Sean.
Good evening, thank you for being here. My name is Shauna Huffman. I currently serve in place 2 on the Frisco City Council, where I was elected 3 years ago. Last year I was selected by my peers on City Council to serve as your mayor pro tem. I'm a single mom of proud 2 teenage incredible daughters, one of whom is here tonight, Lily, and I'm proud to have her with me. I spent the last 5 years serving our small business community through the Chamber of Commerce, and then a couple weeks ago took a new job to serve as community relations manager for a small tech firm that has moved into Frisco. What I have noticed, and that we were 15 years ago when I moved here, it was a fantastic community to live in. And just last year, we were known as, by Money Magazine, as the #1 place to live in America. It's something that we've done well, it's what we've worked hard at, it's the where we see us going in the future, and it is my job to continue to make us keep going that direction and to stay the #1 city to live in America.
All right, Stephanie.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Cleveland. I'm running for Frisco City Council Place 4. I want to thank you for the Frisco Democratic Club for hosting this tonight. So to a little bit about myself, I'm a Navy veteran, also a single mother, 2 kids, and I've been a volleyball coach and have a strong background in Navy contracts, government contracts, moved to aerospace, and then to into the technology industry. I've chaired committees for veterans, Special Olympics, and women in technology. And I've served my country, and now I want to serve my city and community.
And Bill.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Thanks for coming out tonight. Thanks to the Democratic Club for hosting this evening. My name is Bill Woodard. I'm currently serving you on Frisco City Council Place 4. I'm a 14-year resident of the city of Frisco. I moved here in March of 2005 for the school districts and fell in love with the city. Shortly after moving here, I decided that I wanted to be involved with this great place that we call home. So I volunteered and started out by chairing the Census Committee. I stayed involved and was ultimately appointed to the Planning and Zoning Commission, to which I served for 6 years, the last 2 of which I was elected chair by my peers. 3 years ago, I was elected to Place 4, which I currently serve in. By trade, I'm in accounting and finance. I have a master's in accounting, bachelor's in finance. I serve as the chief credit officer at a bank down in Dallas. So I have a broad range of experience across the city that I believe has served us well, and I look forward to answering all your questions this evening.
Bill, I'll give you the first question. We'll start with a red hot topic in Austin today, 2.5% cap on property taxes. Do you support or oppose that?
As currently presented, I do not support the 2.5% cap. The problem with that is that presumes that Austin knows better than all the cities in Texas how best to run themselves. I believe in local control, and I believe all the cities know best what they can do to help their residents. In our case, we've implemented a homestead exemption the last 2 years that now equates to 10%, something that I'd like to see to get up to 20%. Those homestead exemptions have actually provided more tax relief for our residents than the cap that the state would have placed. I do think we all recognize the need for tax relief, but reform is not necessarily relief in the case that's presented. Frisco's recently presented some options to the legislatures to some things that we think could be modified in the legislation that would better fit Frisco and allow us to continue to help our residents, and I do support those proposed changes.
Let's continue that question all the way down the line here, Stephanie. And the question is, the 2.5% cap that is being debated in Austin today, I think it may still be underway, likely still underway as we speak here. And for those of you who aren't following it, 2.5% cap is how much cities can raise taxes if this passes. Anything over that would require an election in each city. You support or oppose that, Stephanie?
I'll have to agree with Mr. Woodard that as it is, I don't support that. I worry about the lack of local control, and I think that one of the amendments is, or not amendments, one of the changes is that that's 2.5% over a 5-year period.
The rolling 5-year period, yes, ma'am.
Correct. So no, I don't support that.
And Stephanie, you still have a little time left. Let me ask you, what do you tell homeowners though who might complain, who do complain? Property taxes are through the roof, and they keep growing every year.
Correct. So actually, I've talked to a lot of people about that as I'm walking through the neighborhoods and talking. And one thing that I think most people don't quite understand is that the taxes for our city is such a small portion of our overall property tax, and the ISD taxes are the biggest portion. And I think we do need tax reform for our school taxes.
Yeah, and taxes, school taxes, I think it's more than half of the check you pay, maybe 60%
Yes.
of the check we all pay. Sean?
I have quite a few thoughts on this. Actually, 180 amendments have been filed on HB2 as we speak, and actually they stopped debate today and they postponed it till Monday. 5 of those amendments are actually amendments that in my testimony before the House Ways and Means Committee, which was invited, as Frisco was invited to come down, 5 of those amendments are actually amendments that we proposed in our testimony. So I'm proud of those amendments that are going forward because I've worked very hard on this bill. And they're actual amendments that do things to provide actual relief, not just reform, that will actually incentivize cities to do better and to do more. Real quickly, a couple of them were, if we partner with school districts, with your SROs and your school resource officers, that you would get a credit for that. So to encourage cities to do that. If you do new hires in public safety, you get a credit for that. If you're doing a homestead exemption, you get a credit for that. So things that would actually put more money back in the taxpayers' pockets. This bill, what I'm afraid of is that since it's not really partnered with HB3, is that because that's the major portion of your tax bill, we're going to be back in 2 years saying, where was our real tax relief? And so since we don't have a guarantee that HB3 is going to pass, those are my grave concerns.
So to be clear, so HB2 with the cap, you support or oppose the cap with the amendments you were discussing?
The amendments, if the amendments are put in there, I absolutely 100% support it because I believe that's actually going to bring real relief to our taxpayers and not just talk about it.
Of course, there's a long way before they decide on that. Mukesh?
Sure. As it is, the 2.5% cap is, I won't support it. There are a couple of things that we need to look at. This is a historic change. The way cities are performed in the past and all the cities, right, has always income and the revenue that came in and spent it in the direction where the city needed the most. By capping the 2.5% at one stop, yeah, of course I agree there are some amendments that need to be worked on, but as of right now I don't support it. There needs to be a transition that needs to happen from the 2.5% to give some governance to the city. There are a couple of things that are happening over here, right? There are local policies that we have. We are given some hosted exemption. We are given some relief to the city currently, right? And then if Austin decides, hey, we need to stop, and focus on one direction, then we need to pull back on what we are giving to our city residents. The other thing is this does open all our eyes that the city and the budget and the economy not always stay strong. So we need to plan very economically all the time. And part of that is also increasing our commercial tax base, which we have neglected for a long time. We are less than 22% commercial tax base and Plano is 50%. And that's the reason how they balance their budget.
Gene?
I do agree and approve of it because it gives the citizens more control. Bottom line, the money belongs to the citizens. And they should be able to say how their money is spent. Now, it does come up for a vote, and one of the complaints is that it costs so much to have an election. However, the objective of having a city council is to have money management and have the city manage. The people should have more control. I do approve.
All right. Let's stick on this theme just for a moment because over the last few days, Governor Abbott has talked about raising the sales tax by 1% to fund education. I'm curious, though, what you guys think, and Gene, we'll start with you. How will that impact citizens and this city?
Well, I'm not in favor of 1% increase, and I think it will impact citizens because any tax that goes up, it hits the purse, and the citizens will have to pay for it. Also, it may affect our tourism because our taxes are going to go up. Every time you purchase something, you're going to be paying more.
Mukesh?
I don't agree to that. I think it is going to impact our economy a lot more. I think the revenue is important, strong economy is important, sales are important. By increasing 1% on top of on the taxes is not maybe the most ideal solution to fund for the cost. So I think we need to find alternate solutions to do that.
And Sean, they've been trying to find solutions like Mukesh has just mentioned here. What do you think about this 1% possible raise, and will it impact the community here?
I think it'll greatly impact the community because if you start focusing on something that's more volatile, like sales tax, where you can't predict what comes in, that's going to make it very difficult to budget effectively and make it very difficult for us to manage taxpayer dollars. We have already noticed that just this first quarter, our sales tax numbers are down, and so therefore we're having to decrease our budget spending already. That's a good thing that we're decreasing our budget spending, but it also means that we're then having to be aware of things that services that we provide for our citizens may not be at the full scale that they need to be at because it's dependent upon some of that sales tax number. So putting it on something that's volatile is a concern for me.
Stephanie?
So I'll also agree that I don't support that for the same reason. Yes, it also makes it harder to account for how much money is coming in. But at the same time, I think a sales tax increase will impact the residents much more even than just the property tax. So I think it's going to impact, and and some of the lower income more so than the others.
Bill?
I have concerns about raising the sales tax. As my colleague mentioned, it's a very volatile tax. It also hurts the lower income residents more, as they tend to spend more of their income on items that get sales tax. So I think there's some challenges there. I do applaud the governor for thinking outside the box and trying to come up with other solutions. But the sales tax is too regressive in nature.
Let's talk about an issue that I hear about quite a bit when I talk to folks from anywhere north of the George Bush, and that is public transportation, DART. You support or oppose bringing it up here? Gene, we'll start with you.
Yes, I am for having DART. Of course, we need to really do a lot more planning and find out how effective it can be. Right now, we have a lot of traffic problems, and having some other form of transportation will certainly alleviate our traffic problem, but, well, help to alleviate it. But we have to plan things. One of the problems we have now is that planning has not been as effective as it should be. We sort of are coming after the fact, after we have problems trying to plan things and put things together. But this is a system that might help alleviate the traffic situation we have.
Okay.
My background, I came from a city which is the most populous city in the world, Bombay. So I have seen how public transportation can be very efficient and can be built. The world we are living in currently, the rate at which Frisco is growing, 6.5% in the population, assuming we have at least the same growth in the next couple of years, we will have significant traffic issues on top of what we already have. Every city council member here in the past has talked about traffic as a major concern in any debate, and we still continue to have that. So I think having a DART, having a public transportation system, and also on top of it, I believe that we, on the north side of Frisco, McKinney, Allen, and Prosper, we also need to have additional transportation that can be local transportation. That will also help alleviate a lot of problems. Currently what we are seeing is there is a lot of pass-through traffic, and the fact of the matter is most of the people who live in Frisco don't work in Frisco, so people do commute a lot. So yes, public transportation completely welcome, and local transportation on the north side also very welcome.
And of course, this will cost as well too, Shauna.
Absolutely, I'm not in favor of bringing DART up to Frisco, and the reason is because it's a bottomless pit for money. It is very expensive to subsidize. The cost per rider is way out of control. Other cities have put billions of dollars into a system, and they just barely have a few bus stops, or they have one train stop going through. It's also based on an outdated system, and so I'm not in favor of spending city tax dollars and what our residents put in for that situation. I do believe that we need to consider more futuristic-looking public transportation systems. We've already been working with the Denton County Transit Authority to do local options, to do things that provide low-cost rides for those who might need them, both of our senior population and those who may not have transportation. We've looked at other things, that there might be a commuter rail that could go through at some point. But as far as going into the DART system, the cities who put into that have not gotten what they've put. They've not got anything to show for the millions upon millions upon millions of dollars they've put into it. So I don't think it's worth our taxpayer money.
Stephanie, do you have one?
I do now, sorry. I was seeing mine flash there for a while and panicked. I agree with that with DART. I don't think DART is the right answer for Frisco. If you look at Plano and to Shauna's point, the millions of dollars that they've invested in DART, and you see one or two people on these buses rolling through, I think that's a backward-looking solution for a problem that we need to look forward with. We need to continue with the technology that we're using for traffic relief. We're implementing the traffic relief for the traffic lights and gathering the data. We need to analyze that and use some more predictive technology. I would also like to see and look at different ideas for just kind of what we used to call in the military a rotator, something that hits the high points, whether that's in partnership with a private entity, but for certain neighborhoods and maybe the big attractions like PGA and Stonebriar, so that some of the people who have chosen not to drive or can't drive, elderly or the students, can have a way to get to the great things that we have to offer in Frisco.
Bill?
I'm not in favor of bringing DART to Frisco. There's a lot of reasons. The expense, I think Plano spent over $1 billion and they've got 1 or 2 train stations and not a lot of bus stations. It's extremely expensive to operate, and the challenge with usage is that if folks can drive to the airport in 30 minutes, they're not going to take a train that's going to take them 2 hours to get there. So I don't think that we would have the usage either. I am fully supportive of some of the programs that we've already looked at with Denton County Transportation Authority and the Transportation Management District that we've already established down in the Hall Office Park and Star and Frisco Station area. We had the Drive AI program that was out for the last few months that recently wrapped up, and we're analyzing how well that worked. I believe it showed proof of concept for having shuttles type systems and on-demand systems in those higher density areas that we've got towards the south end of the city. And I think as we grow and PGA comes in, that we'll continue to expand the usage of those. And we've already got the seeds in place. So I would stay with our current model of dedicating that sales tax for CDC and EDC.
Frisco's 117 years old this year. 75%, more than 75% of its population arrived in the last couple of decades. The question is there a point of too much growth? There are new subdivisions all over the place. If so, how and what is managed? And Bill, we'll start with you and come back this way.
So that's something that we've talked about for a number of years. I think the highlight came in 2015 when we redid our master plan and we got all the residents together. We had thousands and thousands of data inputs on that. And when we finished that master plan, the final build out number was a lot higher than I think any of us expected or wanted. It was around 375,000. And I said at that time as Chair of Planning and Zoning that it would be incumbent upon Planning and Zoning and future councils to make sure we only approve projects that we thought were great for Frisco that could reduce that number. And to date, we've reduced that number to around 300,000, and that's just in the last 3 years alone. So I still think we have some work to do on that. We have specific areas that we target that I could talk more about. I'm about ready to run out of time. So I do think we need to reduce it some, but we're continuing to work on it.
Stephanie?
On that, I will say I do applaud the city council and mayor on what they've done to help renegotiate some of the zoning that was already approved for so many multifamily apartments into other uses, as well as requiring the developers with the green space, the percentage that they're required when they're developing. And I think that's an important part of keeping Frisco from just becoming just bumper to bumper developments. So we have that ability to have our residential areas, but with the green space that doesn't make it feel so tight.
I think it's interesting that people always want to stop the growth after they've arrived. That said, though, we have done some things to help slow down or at least make it smarter development. A couple of things that we've done is we've capped the density per acre in the projects where it was appropriate. We've also increased and actually still phasing for the first time of office space over multifamily residential over any of the density that would exist, which our office space is very needed. We've also, when we first came on council in 2016, the projected build out was over 400,000. Now it's predicted at about 302,000. So during my time on council, I've worked hard at it, and we've actually brought it down 25% in build out. So while it is market driven, and we want to be a welcoming community, I think that's extremely important. We also want to be smart about doing it. I think we put those plans in place exactly to do so.
Mukesh, again, the question is there a point of too much growth? If so, how and what is managed?
Right. I believe we need to listen to the residents right now because we are at a point where city has grown more than 65% land has been developed. We have 30-35% of land that is left. The growth has been too fast in the last 10 years, especially 110,000 to 185,000 population, and every day I see here there is a new number that's populated. So I think we need to be listening to our residents now, step back and understand where we want to be. Do we want to go back and be the suburban style? Do we want to be semi-suburban? Do we want to be fully urban? Right? No one wants to be fully urban because no one moved to Frisco to to be urban, right? We wanted a suburban lifestyle. That's why the residents want to be, and it has been, shown every time there is a zoning case, how many people show up and protest, right, and not heard. So I think the smart, yes, we need to do it, but the smart doesn't have to be just with zoning. I think there is a lot of things that we can do smart, especially balancing the commercial, the residential, the open space, the park. Everything has to be balanced. It just can't be just done by zoning. So there are a lot of things that we need to do along with the group.
Jean?
Well, our density is really too much. And the rapid growth and the density, as I said before, is causing many of our problems, like our traffic. And as much as we try to manage the traffic, we won't be able to manage it until we have less density. That is what's causing our traffic problem. And that is one of the situations that's going on with the city council, is that they're not listening to the citizens. People move to Frisco for the suburban character. And with the rapid growth, we're losing our suburban character. If people wanted to move to Dallas, if they wanted the Dallas community, they would have moved there and not to Frisco. The citizens have complained, they've spoken to the city council, and the city council has not listened. They continue to increase the density of our city.
Shauna, you want to say something?
I would love to respond to that, because actually we've just listed several things where the city council has absolutely listed and not only listened, but actually enacted. So we've decreased the density per acre that you can do by law. We've also phased in more commercial property instead of residential property to increase our commercial percentage base so that we can lower the tax base on our residents. We've also understood that if you want to have a suburban community, that is the most expensive taxpayer situation you can have. A suburban, rooftops only, is the most expensive city you can have, and our tax rate will shoot up. All you have to do is look at the tax rate in Prosper to see that. We've balanced the commercial growth. We've worked really hard at it needing to be where the infrastructure was in place along the tollway. So the things that our counterparts are asking for, we've already done them. And in listening to residents, you have to actually go and sit with residents to do so. I've spent hours upon hours upon hours listening to residents all over the city, and not every resident feels the same way. So you have to balance all of those concerns over each other, and that's what we've worked really hard to do.
Mukesh?
So what has been brought down recently, what my opponent just mentioned, is 50 units per acre. That to me is nowhere close to anywhere we need to be. Most of the cities that I have worked with several cities, I've worked all over DFW area. 35 max on the high density side and 20 on the low side. That's what we have seen. And talking about balance, right? Currently we are at 22% commercial tax base and 78% residential tax base. How did we get there? In the last 3 years, how many home permits have been issued? That's what caused the off balance right now. That is why the residential tax base burden is so high, is we have not maintained the balance of the commercial.
Jean, you want to have a response, and Shauna, I'll let you follow up too.
Oh, thank you. Well, one of the problems we're having as far as the density is that our city council is not listening to the citizens. And one example is the whole park situation. Now, Shauna did mention on her flyer or mailer that she met with the citizens in that area. And I just wondered why, after meeting with them and all the citizens showed up, that she voted instead with the developer versus the citizens.
I did not vote with the developer. I voted with all the citizens who also spoke out. I voted with the citizens who sent email after email after email. There was over 128 emails from citizens who said we support this project and we want this project. And so we did listen to residents. In fact, we sat down with residents in that same neighborhood and in the residents surrounding. And actually, the Hall development made pages and pages and pages of concessions to actually move the tall buildings that were already previously zoned there, and he had the right to move them further away from the neighbors so that they would be away from them. And so he actually made agreements that were benefiting the residents that he had the legal right to do. So we are listening to residents, again, it's that balance, because there are just as many residents who come and speak one direction as there are residents who speak the other direction.
Stephanie, let me ask this last question on this topic, and we can move on though. Is there room for reducing density more in this city? I'm sorry, Stephanie, Shauna. Two S's there. Shauna, is there room for reducing density more?
Absolutely, and we've worked hard with developers across that already have zoning for the garden spacing, for the garden apartments, to actually reduce those. We've made agreements with them, we've negotiated with them, we worked hard with them. And phasing in the office space has actually reduced that and done that as well.
Well, let me get Bill and Stephanie here too. One citizen posed this question to us in the call for questions. Bill, will let you answer this one first. It seems like there are still many new building sites zoned for residential areas, she writes, but some residents say the city should now start improving on quality of life. More parks, promoting wildlife. What is your vision for future zoning sites in Frisco, Bill?
Well, certainly, I'm probably the most vocal in regards to supporting our parks and open space systems. I would love to see the trails built out sooner rather than later, but we've got budgets that we have to deal with. We're finishing up right now our Parks and Rec master plan. That actually finished about a couple of years ago. We're finishing our hike and bike trail master plan right now. I've served on both of those committees. I was a big proponent of our park system while I was on our Planning and Zoning Commission as well. So I would envision a great deal more open space. So much so that I've quite literally put my own blood and sweat in and helped start the mountain bike trail that we have out at the Northwest Community Park. So I would love to see those increase, and I think we will. We just have to phase it in with our budget.
Stephanie?
Well, I don't think anyone can argue with wanting more green space. I live in a far northeast portion that used to be out in the country, so we don't have the benefit of a lot of these beautiful parks that the kids get to walk to and the wide sidewalks. So I definitely support the increase in those. And I know I've seen the plans where there's another park going in at the northern end, I believe, of Frisco Lakes, which I think they're really looking forward to. And so absolutely I support that.
Let's do a quick lightning round here too. Make this a little more personal. Gene, we're going to start with you. Favorite restaurant in town and one thing people don't know about you? On the spot here. Favorite restaurant, one thing people don't know.
I really don't eat out, so I don't have a favorite restaurant in town, but I do like I don't eat out. I'm sorry, I can't give you that.
What's the one thing people don't know about you that might be surprising?
I enjoy reading, and I belong to a book club.
I had the same trouble answering the question when the station asked me about the coffee thing. I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know. But you guys are running for office, not me. So Mukesh, you're next. Favorite restaurant in town? And what's one thing people don't know about you?
Joe's Pizza, Bird Park. So that's a nice pizza shop, and they always enjoy it. And they also added more flavors, Indian spices in the roti spite. So what one thing people may not know about me. 20 years in this country, but I still drink chai. I don't drink coffee.
All right. Shauna?
My favorite restaurant is, and my daughter will agree to this, it's Christina's, and I get the same thing every time, which is the crispy taco plate. One thing that maybe, I know some people know about me, but what a lot of people may not know is that I'm a master seamstress. I just don't have time to do it anymore, but I used to make all of my daughter's clothing until they stopped letting me dress them all night.
Stephanie?
Well, unfortunately, I'm one of those people who I've never met a menu that I couldn't order off of. So I'll say probably my two go-to places are Bawarchi's on El Dorado, and then Ernesto's Mexican food. Doesn't matter which location you go to, they're always amazing. And things that people probably don't know about me, because it's the one thing I don't put on Facebook because everybody else does, is I'm super excited about Game of Thrones. So.
Bill?
I'd have to say favorite restaurant is Pizzeria Testa. There's a pizza that has an egg right in the middle of it. It's just absolutely phenomenally incredible. I have to get it every time I go. As far as something that people don't know about me, I actually spent 6 months in college working in the engine room on a commercial ship.
Wow. One more question from our audience that we asked early on. This woman writes, senior citizens often follow their children and grandchildren to an area, and many times they want smaller places with zero lot line homes. My mom did the same thing in Nashville, where I'm from, living next to my sisters. Frisco obviously exploding with big houses, and the question is there room to accommodate downsizing seniors? And how do you plan to accommodate them? Bill, we'll start with you.
Yes, there is. Frisco Lakes is probably our largest senior community right now by far, and they have a lot of homes that are zero lot lines. As we've seen more developers come in, we've had more developers ask for narrower lots and the patio homes, which are those zero lot lines. So I'm supportive of those. Part of that is market driven, so we've got to have developers that are willing to build it, and they've got to work within our zoning structure to do that. But we do have space for it. I'm supportive of it, and if somebody can bring us a good project, happy to take a look at it.
Stephanie.
Well, of course, I'm supportive of it. I can't wait to talk my mom into coming down here from Oklahoma. My sister benefits from her helping with her kids all the time. So I agree, Frisco Lakes is a really large development of just stunning and probably one of our largest boating bases over there. But I understand there's another one going in Edgestone, which is supposed to be really nice with the bungalows and different styles of homes, so they've got some options. So absolutely support that. I think a multi-generational community benefits everybody from children all the way up.
Sean?
I absolutely support a diversity of housing for our growing population of seniors. It's actually one of our biggest, fastest growing populations that are coming in demographics. We actually have several products here already. Besides Frisco Lakes, we've got townhomes that we've approved recently. We've got patio homes. We also have several senior communities that are multi-generational, like the Canals, where you've got family residential, you've got smaller townhomes, you've got apartments, and then you've got the assisted living where they can have the different levels of care that they need. I was just out speaking to a group of residents at one of those the other day. We have another one that's coming online later this year, and that's actually several things that we've been developed that people might complain about the density, but several of the multifamily units that are coming in are senior living communities that are coming in so that we can provide for that fast-growing population that needs smaller housing.
One thing I agree with Shauna is we should support a lot of senior living, and that is one of the aging population that we have seen. If you look at the demographics of the population growth, millennials and senior citizens both have been the majority of the trend, or people who have been moving into the city. So yes, we need to support, we need to do assisted living, we need to see if we can do more townhome patios, zero lot line, single story homes that we can put together for. And that's another reason why we also need to look at public transportation. As the city grows and ages, which naturally any city does, you just can't live without public transportation and expect the 65 age or 85 age people to be driving around with no public transportation. So that's okay.
Yes, we do have a very large senior population, and Frisco is a wonderful place for seniors. Our seniors here are very active, and what we have provided for them, we have a senior center, and the city council has invested in our senior center, and we will have a new one opening up here shortly. And Frisco is a wonderful city, a fantastic city for families, for people to raise the children, and for grandparents to watch their grandkids grow.
Can I just add one quick thought? That we also have employed a senior exemption, and when you add that to our homestead exemption, our seniors enjoy about a 33% homestead exemption for them. So we're not just helping and providing a diversity of housing, we're actually helping and trying to bring the cost of living down for them.
Next question, Bill, we'll start with you on this one. Do you think Frisco has a homeless problem? And if so, would you support building a supportive housing, shelter, anything like that?
I think having any homeless is a problem, and we know for a fact that we have several out there. And one of the things I said even back in 2016, a lot of people don't realize the number of students that we have that are considered homeless as well. So yeah, I think any homeless is a problem. We do a lot to support the community organizations around Frisco, such as Frisco Family Services, Frisco Fast Packs, among others, with helping with those issues. I don't think that we're at a point right now where Frisco could afford to build a single shelter, but we do have housing programs within the city, governed through our Social Services and Housing Trust Fund Board, and I do support that, and we'll continue to look for ways to help those individuals that are out there. The ones that we know about, we have our police officers check with them periodically to make sure they're doing okay. Some of them have refused help, others accept help on a periodic basis. So I would continue to look for ways to help them wherever we can.
Stephanie, the question is, do you think Frisco has a homeless problem, and do you support building supportive housing for them? If so.
Okay, so yes, I do believe we have a homeless problem, and one thing that's a misconception, homeless doesn't just mean the people you see sleeping underneath a bridge. These can also be, as Mr. Woodard said, the students who are, and I'm going to get the term wrong, but basically they don't have a home stability, so they may be sleeping in cars, couch surfing, living with relatives, and based on their economic situation. So it's not just what you're not seeing as you're driving down Preston. So do I support it? I think we need to look into it. There's a group that unfortunately, because of all the campaigning, I haven't been able to jump in with, is Step Up in Frisco, and I understand they're working towards this, and I've worked with the homeless census for Collin County, and I'd like to see where we can go with that, whether it's from the city or with interfaith
Ministries.
buildings, yes.
Sean?
I do think there's a growing homeless population that's happening in Frisco, as in a lot of our areas in the region. But I do think that with what Step Up is doing, is they're actually doing it privately and bringing the faith organizations together and the private organizations together, because anytime the city starts to get involved in something like that, or any government entity, we tend to not do it the right way or as good as it could be done. We partner now with Samaritan's Inn, we partner with City House, we partner with some of the youth things that are initiatives that are there to take care of those populations. And as my colleague mentioned, our police force is actively engaged with the ones that we know about and continuing to provide services to them where they're needed. So we are actively working on those things in a way that actually can provide real support for the initial problems that put people on the streets, as opposed to just taking care of the symptoms where they exist.
But everything's been established, there's a homeless issue here. What's the answer, do you think?
Yes, there is, and I've been involved heavily in community services. I don't know how many people know. I'm also the founding member of Lions Club, which is very actively involved in a lot of community services. And we target especially areas which are shelters, that we provide food for them and everything. And it is shocking how many times you go there and there are people outside who can't get into shelters. So of course we don't want to get Frisco to get there, but that's the real situation where we have. We have kids in Frisco who don't have food to eat over the weekend when the school is closed. There are organizations like Fastback and others where I have volunteered firsthand. I've seen that you have to pack the food for every Thursday. They pack it for Friday to Saturday, for Friday to Sunday, because they don't get food because they don't come to school over the weekend. So yes, we have a serious issue coming up, and also not to mention that is tied to the crime and the theft that is happening. But this population is a moving population. They can live in cars, they can move from one place to other. So we do need to provide for them. We need to plan for it. It is not something that we can say and shoo away saying that it won't happen in Frisco. We need to plan for it.
And Jean?
Yes, we do have a homeless situation, and very happy to see that many of our religious organizations have stepped up and have programs in the churches. I know the church that I belong to has an outreach to the homeless, and we have groups of people that go out and look for them and take food and spend time with them, and even try to get them some counseling and help to better their situation. And I'm really proud of the citizens of Frisco, the way they reach out. We don't see the homeless people, but we have a community that cares for all of the individuals, and it's good to see that even people that have nothing are being touched by the community. We have a fantastic community here.
Let's do one more quick lightning round, one last question that several people had. Should the city pass an ordinance, we talked about local control, Should the city get involved in passing an ordinance requiring HOAs to allow xeriscape lawns to save water? You know, people planting drought-resistant plants, etc. Gene, we'll start with you. Should the city pass an ordinance requiring HOAs to allow this?
I don't agree with that. I would not agree with that.
Okay.
Can you please repeat the question?
Yeah.
What is to be allowed and what not?
Should the city pass an ordinance to require homeowners associations to allow residents who live in those subdivisions to have xeriscape lawns that can include everything from, you know, cactus to rocks to anything else that can survive droughts, essentially? Cut down on water usage.
Okay. Honestly, I have not heard of this issue before. None of the residents have complained, so maybe the current city council might be a better judge if she has really seen any formal complaints about it. If need be, like any other city ordinance is passed to answer if there is a specific issue, right? If the issue is growing and we are seeing it in multiple communities and subdivisions, the answer is yes, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, maybe I should establish it a little more. Obviously, we've been in droughts before. You guys know that. You've probably seen the signs in the subdivisions. And finding water for North Texas and all the metropolitan areas is an issue that state lawmakers have been wrestling over for a while. So I guess the question that the individual has here is should the city get ahead of it or wait till, you know, we're actually in the crisis?
Yes, we should,
Okay.
absolutely, yeah.
Gene, hop back in there. I didn't give you that perspective.
Yeah, I think that they should give the citizens an option, but I don't think that it should be a pass or ordinance, because then we're getting more infringing upon the types of yards, and it's becoming more regulated, and we don't want to be a regulated community in that you're not able to really have the type of yard you want. And you may want to have flowers or whatever, and
All right.
I don't think it should be so regulated, and I think our city should stay away from that.
Sean?
We already have some water management things in place, and since 2011, we've actually decreased our water consumption, even though our population has gone up. We've decreased our yearly water consumption every year, especially in the summer, because we've done a lot of education. We've done things where the city goes out to do sprinkler checks to show you when you should water. We have the weather station with the city that will, if you sign up for the emails, you'll get notification of when you should water, when you don't need to water, and how much you should water. We also provide things as far as education of the types of plants that work better here in Frisco. So we are doing management and education things already, and I think that's the best method to go about instead of telling someone exactly what they should put in their yard. We do, though, not allow you to water ryegrass. You can plant ryegrass, but you just can't water it. So it makes it difficult to then keep it growing. So that helps. Those are things, that's kind of the only thing we really would specifically do.
Yeah, just to reiterate the question the citizen had is whether the city should pass an ordinance requiring HOAs to allow this, to give the homeowners the option. So that I don't know if your answer changes at all, but
If neighborhoods are, as long as they're following city standards of what are, what exists, then people get to choose the neighborhoods they want to choose based on the style and design of those
and the
neighborhoods.
HOA, all that stuff.
But I don't really think the government should get involved in that much.
Okay, all right, Steph?
Water is a major issue, and I think that is part of the expenses that city manages. I think there should be some control on it.
Okay, Steph?
So I moved up from Plano into far north Frisco, and I've got about an acre and a half, and my apologies to the generations of hydrangeas before I learned my lesson to not fight Mother Nature. So if the city has to get involved, locally we live in a neighborhood without an HOA, but I remember when we did have to go by what the HOA required. So the city does have to get involved and pass an ordinance to enforce HOAs to allow residents to be able to have those options. I think so. I think it can only benefit the city and the environment.
Bill?
So I served on the HOA board for about 10 years, prior to some other service, obviously. And I don't think the city should force the HOAs to do that. I would highly encourage the HOAs to allow people of their own accord to make those changes, though. Yes, we have challenges with water and conservation, and We do a lot with education through our WaterWise programs. And one of the reasons why we require lawns to be installed in the first place is because of the issues that homes in this area have with foundation problems if the foundations aren't kept watered. So I think there has to be a balance there. And again, I would encourage the HOAs to allow that flexibility, but I don't think that we should put mandates on them at this point.
All right, it's time for our 2-minute closing statements from each candidate. Gene, you started, so